So I'm here with Chad Husby at the Fairchild Tropical Botanic Gardens, and one of the things we were discussing is that there's so many great plants often found in the wild and in botanic gardens that would be great cultivated varieties or cultivated plants, like or in container plants, and they don't always make it into the market. So he wanted to highlight some of his favorites here.
Absolutely, we're kind of in a wonderful little age where we're able to introduce plants to people through social media and through the internet and whatnot, and that hopefully will generate enough interest to get some of these available in the trade. And that's one of the things that botanic gardens can do, and it's a similar process to, you know, the American diet used to be very bland. We used to only eat a few things, you know, back in the days of David Fairchild, who our garden was named after. And now we eat things like mangoes and even, you know, a lot of the fresh, like even things like blueberries that just weren't around 100 years ago. And our diets are much more diverse, and now we can make our houseplant palette diverse in a similar way. And sometimes we can introduce whole families of plants to the houseplant cultivation that you know, people really had not experimented much with. This is a pandan in the genus Pandanus, many of which are trees and too large to grow at home, but there are many of them, you know, more than 500 species, which are not, many of which you can't even find photos of, that would make fantastic houseplants because they've got nice waxy leaves that can tolerate drier conditions. A lot of them grow in forests, which are shady, so their light requirements aren't too bad. This one is one that seems to only be growing at Fairchild Garden. It was from a collection in Palawan in the Philippines, an incredibly beautiful island in the south of the Philippines, in the early 80s, and it's been growing in the garden ever since, and we've started to propagate it. And it grew along rivers in that island, you know, with some shade, and it could actually be completely flooded when the river levels were high. So probably a plant you would never overwater, you know, so you could water it to your heart's content and it would be very happy. And it even makes these very special infructescences, little groups, clusters of fruits that are very interesting in the pandans. But you know, with the full-size pandans, the fruits would be huge, and you could never accommodate them at home. But this is like a miniature one that's the size of a ping pong ball.
And does this propagate by offsets? Because that looks like what it's doing here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very much like a bromeliad in a way.
It produces a lot of offsets, and often plants that grow in rivers do that. For example, like there are certain palms that grow in rivers, and they will have the same habit where they will make a lot of little suckers, and each of those will produce roots to anchor it in, and it forms this kind of low-growing, really well-anchored cluster. And in horticulture, we take advantage of that because each of those are very easy to propagate. And
then this one doesn't have a species name to it, does it?
Not yet, no. We're going to have
to
work on that.
And you've had it since the 80s,
Since the 80s, yeah. And there are a lot of plants that do kind of remain, you know, fairly obscure, even in botanical collections or even in private collections. Some, you know, where one or two people have a plant and they think it's neat, but not, you know, it doesn't really get discovered until much later, and then everybody's like, well, why didn't we, you know, start growing this earlier? And so I hope this kind of thing, I think, has that potential.
Well, you have some more of these, so let's take this one off.
We do have some others. There's some really outstanding of these dwarf pandans that I think have tremendous potential. This is another one we haven't yet figured out the name, but I'm trying to trace down where it's from. We think it may be from Madagascar.
Very Ponytail Palm-esque, you know, with its leaves.
It has a very similar architecture to the Ponytail Palm, though unlike that species, this is probably a wholly different family. This one is probably very tolerant of a lot of moisture, and it has something that's usually you see on the larger pandans, which are these aerial roots. So it's a perfect miniaturized version of the giant pandan. I mean,
it almost looks like a little bonsai.
This would make an ideal bonsai. And it also, one of the things that sometimes is a problem with pandans is they hold on to their dead leaves, but this one sheds them very readily. So it keeps a nice green, compact canopy like this. And then each of these branches, you could make a new plant.
And is this one something that doesn't mind to be pot bound? Because right here, this seems like a very rooted plant right here. It's
very pot bound. We're definitely going to pot it up shortly. But yeah, clearly it's been in this pot for years from the nursery where we found it. And it's still doing beautifully. So it should, and then, you know, give it a bigger pot. And this is one that can actually spread to fill whatever container you're in. It probably won't get much taller than 2 or 3 feet.
I mean, yeah, that is an excellent. I could definitely see this making it into the houseplant market there.
Absolutely.
All right, what's the next one?
And then one last pandanus to talk about is one that actually crosses the divide between being a houseplant and being a food plant.
Oh my goodness. Well, this one almost looks a little bit more like a Dracaena.
It does, and
Yeah.
unlike many pandans, even these other ones, they have they have small teeth on the edges of the leaves. This one has no teeth. So it's totally smooth, like a Dracaena, so it does look more like that. But this is Pandanus Amarilla. We do know what this one's called, and it's what they make. They use this to make desserts and to flavor rice in Southeast Asia. So whenever a dessert has pandan in the name or has green, it's from these leaves.
So it's actually the leaves.
The
Okay.
leaves, yeah, the leaves have a wonderful fragrance and a nice flavor that they add to dishes. But on top of that, it stays small and compact and will make a brilliant, wonderful container plant and can take some shade. And you can even sit them in water. You could sit this in a saucer of water filled with water, one of the big no-nos for most houseplants, and this would be perfectly happy. You'd never have to worry about it being overwatered.
So you said that there's over 500 species of pandans, and what I'm hearing from you, at least with these three, is that they are very amenable to sitting in water or being overwatered. Is that true across the species?
Many of them. That's
Okay.
really most. Some of them grow in really well-drained habitats, like on rocks, and we haven't really tested to see how much they would like with it. But so many of them grow in swampy areas that's kind of one of their favorite spots for both species. So most of them probably can.
Well, thank you for introducing us to that group of plants. What should be the next one? This one right here, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
And then going to the other end of the spectrum of plants that like to be drier but also aren't too sensitive to watering. This is actually in a genus you'd never expect. This is in the genus Pylea.
Oh, you're right. I would have never guessed that. I would have never guessed that.
So it's the same genus as the artillery plants, which is a famous weed, and also many of the little ornamental Pyleas that have colorful leaves that we like to grow in terraria. But this is one that is from the Dominican Republic. It looks more like a crassula. You know,
Yeah.
and it's from these dry rock cliffs there. But when it flowers, it has a Pylea flower. And they come in separate males and females, and they seem to be very easy to grow in pots under all sorts of conditions. And
I could see this as a xeric landscape plant out in the Southwest, as well as something that you could grow in like harsh light as a houseplant.
absolutely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Very cool. When does it typically flower?
Typically flowers in the spring, yeah.
All right, let's see what the next one is. Should we do this one?
Sure, yeah.
I love the flowers of this.
And then sometimes there's a group of plants that most of its members, do something that's kind of hard to control because, for example, this is an Aristolochia, which have fabulous flowers of all these kind of, fairy tale type shapes. But many of them are vines, fairly quick growing vines that are hard to accommodate at home unless you have some sort of trellis. And a few of them are woody shrubs, but this one is kind of in between. It's herbaceous, it doesn't get very woody, and it just, it gets no more than a couple feet tall, and it's a perfect pot plant, and it constantly flowers with these very peculiar flowers that look something
These
like
look like
some
little
sort of a bird.
birds, yeah.
And they actually attract little flies in nature that go inside that little neck and then rummage around in there and then come back out with pollen. And then they make these seed pods quite abundantly.
What kind of light does this like?
This one seems to be pretty flexible. We're growing it in fairly shady areas and pretty bright areas, so it seems, I think that it's probably quite tolerant. And the leaves are nice and fairly waxy, so it's probably not too sensitive to humidity.
Right. That is always a good sign. When I look at a waxy leaf, I'm like, that's probably going to be a great house plant.
Absolutely. There's a
Uncomplaining.
lot you can figure out
Yeah.
from those kind of characteristics.
Really beautiful plant. Okay, let's see what the next one is. So we have some that are a little bit more fruiting varieties here. This one's
Yeah.
got really nice dangly. It almost reminds me of sometimes of Medanilla. Sometimes have that kind of like pink, flowery like fruits type hanging down like that.
They do indeed, and that's something we don't normally think. We think of houseplants as usually either a foliage attractor or a flower, something. But then there are some of these plants that fruit so much that the fruit is actually their main attraction. And this is Nia psychotrioides. The flowers are really nondescript in this and very tiny. but then they produce this abundance of fruits that hang on for a long time, and then they keep doing fruiting cycles, and they call it the gumdrop plant sometimes because it's got these little interesting jelly bean-like fruits on them, and the colors change, you know, from kind of lighter pink to red, darker red.
And tell me a little bit about the care of this one.
And this one just seems to be a pretty tolerant of a lot of different, you know, seems to not like full sun, you know, but it likes kind of partial shade, and it stays small like this, and it seems like your normal watering practices are pretty adequate. It's not particularly thirsty.
Does it stay small?
It stays quite small, yeah. I mean, and this is a mature size, so it's, and it quickly forms this kind of drooping habit.
It's beautiful.
So it's, and then each of those seeds is very easy to germinate, so you can easily share it and propagate it.
Is it a pectinous kind of fruit? Does it have a lot of pectin in it?
Yeah. It's quite.
So do you have to remove that before you actually seed it?
Usually we do, yeah. It slides off pretty well. But
here's another fruiting tree. This is very attractive.
Yes, and this is as far as we can tell, this is a new introduction that we brought in from Taiwan, probably the first time it's been cultivated in the U.S. We're about to actually offer it in our Members Day sale at the garden to try to get it out to the public. So these were grown from our first seed batches, and it's Wickstromia retusa, so it's in the Euphorbiaceae family, but it's a perfect miniature bonsai. It grows, you know, along the coasts in Taiwan, and it, you know, just in about, you know, a year, it goes from seed to has cute little waxy flowers. There's a couple of them there, kind of greenish yellow.
That's how you could tell it's a euphorbia with its nice little, tiny little flowers.
And then it produces an abundance of these really pretty fruits that, you know, make it look like something for Christmas.
And so when you're propagating this, have you experienced whether the latex is as noxious as some of the other euphorbia?
Haven't really had any problem with the latex in it so far. Yeah, we haven't. I mean, it does have euphorbia-like latex.
Yeah. Great.
And it's
this is a cute one. I could see that
really
this is something that would be like a Christmas plant with the red and green.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so here we are going on to this Opuntia. Now this one doesn't have a lot of spines.
Yeah, and that's the kind of claim to fame of this Opuntia. It's Opuntia concanapa variety aliciana. And it's actually native to Texas and Mexico, but this form, you know, it's normally a very spiny Opuntia, like many of them are. But, you know, for those who don't like to have spiny, dangerous plants around, this one is so smooth that you could rub it against your face. It doesn't even have the little tiny spines that many of the cacti have, so it's a very friendly cactus. And you can propagate it just from these little pads. They root very readily. And of course, it needs a lot of lights, and, you know, but it's also fairly forgiving. If you've got really good drainage, you can water it more frequently, but, you know, generally try not to overwater it.
Does it get edible fruit on it?
Yes, it does. And the fruits don't have any spines, which is good.
Now, speaking of spines, we went to the total opposite end of the spectrum, and you got one with spines.
Yes, if you want to expand your comfort zone to more dangerous plants, there are plenty of opportunities. And this is one of them. This is
to the masochistics out there, you know, the masochists, plant masochists.
A certain beauty and danger here.
Yeah.
This is in the tomato and potato family, so it's in the same genus, the Solanum, as the tomato and potato. And, but it's a Solanum pyrocanthum from Madagascar, and its most famous attribute are these orange spines that it has on the leaves. And it also produces, eventually these are rooted cuttings, some really beautiful purple flowers that are quite abundant, and so it...
Does this spread like crazy? Do you have to keep it contained? Because when I think of sometimes Solanaceae, I think of spreading plants, like plants that will volunteer themselves everywhere.
This has made a lot of fruits, but so far I haven't seen any volunteers, so we'll see if they...
Well, this reminds me of the one that I often see in botanic gardens is Solanum quitoense.
Ah, yes, yes, indeed.
That one with the epiphyllous spines on the leaves.
It has the spines and the kind of...
so this one is a handle with care type of plant.
Yes, indeed.
And then here is another one. It looks like from the same group.
Yeah, this is...
even spinier?
Even spinier, but this is one that is actually used for therapy sometimes. It's Aurora laciniata, so it's a tropical nettle. from South America, and you can see it has these amazingly wicked spines on the stem and on the leaves, and especially even on the undersides.
And the petioles as well.
And
wow,
the petioles.
Look at this. The
And,
undersides.
And they're used medicinally for, actually we'll use the leaves on their skin on purpose, and it'll swell up for about 10 minutes and then goes away. And it's used to improve blood flow and reduce long-term inflammation and whatnot.
So it's almost like a natural acupuncture.
Yeah. And so, it really, like, I just got a little sting in my thumb. And you really feel it, but then it just goes away in a few minutes. And then, you get a little bit of that endorphin feeling like after exercise,
Right.
And like some nettles are very, like there's the famous gimpy plant of Australia that will stay with you for 6 months if you get stung by that. This one is even though it looks more dangerous, it's actually, might be therapeutic. So and they call it urtication, that kind of where you actually touch yourself with the leaves to improve the skin and whatnot. So, and it's also a beautiful plant, easy from cutting. So if you're for the more adventurous houseplant aficionado, this could be just right.
Well, I love that you gave something for everyone, from anybody who overwaters, go for the pandans, to somebody who wants to explore a very death-defying plant, or something that would be a statement plant if you walked in. So thank you so much for your selects. These are ones that I would have never even thought about highlighting.
Pleasure, yeah. It's always good to be expanding our horizons. And with 350,000 plus species of plants out there, there's so much exploring to be done. We often hear like the age of exploration was a long time ago, but it's actually today in the plant world.
Which of Chad's picks do you think should be the next new houseplant? Cast your votes in the comments below. And if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications button to get the next episodes delivered right to your inbox.